In 2021, an entire bank vault was emptied without a single alarm going off. No fingerprints, no forced entry, just silence. But when the footage surfaced weeks later, it showed the real horror. Someone inside the bank had opened the door. July 18, 2021. Downtown Chicago was already boiling at 7:45 a.m. The air was thick, but nothing about the morning seemed out of place. Coffee carts bustled on Monroe Street, and the city's early risers hurried to beat the sun. Just another Sunday. At 7:46 a.m., the silent alarm at the Fifth Charter Federal Bank failed to engage. Not delayed, not glitched, disabled. Within 3 minutes, someone had bypassed the most advanced vault system in Illinois. The kind of system that cost millions to install and supposedly couldn't be broken. But the vault door? Open. The inside? Clean. No shattered locks. No smoke. No damage. $8.7 million in untraceable currency had simply disappeared. The cleaning staff arrived 2 hours later. The first janitor on scene, a woman named Alma Ferris, thought the vault was open for routine servicing. But when she peeked inside and saw bags missing, only then did she realize something was very, very wrong. By 10 a.m., the FBI was already on site. By noon, news trucks lined the entire block. Flawless bank robbery leaves no trace. Inside job, FBI investigates. $8.7 million vanishes without a sound. Social media buzzed with theories. Ex-military thieves, underground tunnels, even AI hackers. But for Special Agent Claire Mendoza, the lead investigator, there was something even more disturbing than the robbery itself. There were no fingerprints, not a single hair, no signs of a break-in. It was as if the money had vanished into smoke or had been handed out deliberately. Claire had been in the bureau for 14 years. She'd tracked arms dealers, cybercriminals, and interstate syndicates. But nothing, absolutely nothing, looked like this. The bank's security was contracted to Park Tech Systems, a firm with federal-grade certifications and 24/7 live monitoring. So why hadn't a single system flagged the breach? She started with the basics: employees. Who had access? Who was scheduled that morning? Who had ever worked on the security infrastructure? That's when a name surfaced: Jordan Lee Marshall. At first glance, Jordan was forgettable. A technician, hired 6 months earlier through Park Tech's third-party temp agency. 34 years old, soft-spoken, clean record, lived alone in a modest Lincoln Park apartment. He wore gloves during every shift, citing sanitation. Ate alone, worked late, never brought his phone inside the building. No friends at work. No complaints, either. Just invisible. On paper, he was a model contractor. But there was one problem. Jordan hadn't shown up to work since the day of the robbery. His apartment was empty. Not abandoned, just spotless. The fridge still ran. His rent was paid. There were no signs of a quick escape. But the bedroom? Blackout curtains. A single steel chair. A laptop bolted to the desk. Inside it, a set of encrypted files, all wiped clean except one folder. Claire knew she had something. The Echo folder was disguised as a software patch, but inside, there were schematics, blueprints of the bank's digital infrastructure, biometric fail-safes, backdoor access codes. Whoever designed this wasn't just a hacker. He was a systems architect. He didn't just find flaws, he built new ones. At the bottom of the folder, a low-res image. A woman's face, captured from behind a glass pane, mid-smile, leaning over a teller counter. Angela Whitaker, no criminal history. Employee of the bank for 3 years. Engaged. Volunteered at a local hospice. She was the face of reliability, and the last person anyone would suspect. Angela claimed not to recognize Jordan when shown the image. Said she didn't know who he was. That the image felt like stalking. That she wanted to press charges for harassment. She broke down during questioning. Asked for a lawyer. Her fiancé came in, furious. Defensive. But Claire wasn't convinced. She ordered a forensic recovery of Angela's cloud backups. There, buried in a deleted folder auto-synced from her old phone, were messages. Short, fragmented, but damning. Almost ready. Same signal at midnight. We walk away different people. You were always more than a bank girl. Jordan had sent them. Angela had replied. Suddenly, this wasn't a one-man job. It was a partnership, a conspiracy, and worse, possibly emotional. But then, the deeper Claire dug, the stranger the story became. Jordan's emails, IP logs, and past communications were rerouted through proxies. All VPNs, all encrypted. But his one mistake? He'd bought a physical notebook, the kind no one tracks, and hid it in a locked cabinet under false floorboards in his closet. In that notebook were hand-drawn floor plans, system bypass protocols, and entries, letters, dozens, all addressed to someone called R. They deserve to feel powerless. Just once. She thinks we're doing this for us. She doesn't see the fire behind it. I'm not a thief. I'm just giving them what they've been stealing from us all along. Jordan wasn't just planning a heist. He was staging a rebellion. He believed the bank, or the system behind it, had wronged him. But how? And who was R? Claire suspected R might be a third conspirator, maybe someone higher. But without digital proof, it was speculation. She returned to the day of the robbery. Angela clocked in at 7:10 a.m. At 7:12 a.m., the cameras cut out. Not fuzzed, not disabled manually. They glitched, as if the feed had never existed. When ParkTech reviewed their logs, a code was found injected 48 hours prior. A line of obscure syntax only used in outdated command terminals. None of the engineers recognized it. Claire brought in a cybersecurity expert. It took 5 days to decrypt the code. The commands weren't just designed to shut the system down. They rewrote the logging process, erased all badge swipes, froze the time logs, even mimicked a live feed for those monitoring remotely. Angela was on duty the entire time, but she never left the break room. Her card was scanned at 7:11 a.m. Then, nothing. When asked again during her second interview why she didn't notice the blackout, she said, "I must have just thought it was maintenance." She smiled, sipped her coffee, but there was something unsettling in that smile. Like she knew more, like she was playing a role. Claire had seen it before, in spies, in people who had rehearsed their lines. Still, there was no footage, no physical evidence. Just one more twist. 3 weeks after the heist, an unmarked envelope arrived at the bureau. No name, no fingerprints, just a thumb drive. Inside, one video file. It opened to static, then shifted. A timestamp, 7:45 a.m., July 18th. Inside the vault, 2 masked figures. One taller, broader, the other smaller, agile, moving in silence, loading bags with factory-like efficiency. At 7:52, the taller figure walked up to the camera and turned around. On the back of his neck, a tattoo, R/73. Claire froze the frame. She enhanced it, and behind the mask, a faint scar along the jawline. Jordan. Then, the smaller figure removed their mask. Briefly, only for a second, enough to smile at the camera. Angela, not frightened, not coerced, complicit. Worse, it seemed planned. The video was damning. Angela, standing next to Jordan in the vault, her hands steady as she helped him load the duffel bags. It wasn't a quick mistake. It wasn't panic. It was calculated, cold. The FBI tried to confront her once more, but this time, she wasn't scared. No tears, no stammering. Angela Whitaker had practiced every answer. She'd learned how to play the victim while secretly holding the power in her hands. The day after the robbery, her lawyer issued a statement. "My client is being wrongly accused. She was simply at the wrong place at the wrong time. She's a victim of manipulation." But the evidence didn't lie. The encrypted texts, the files, the backup messages. Claire stood in her office, the blinds closed, and let her mind run through the facts. Angela Whitaker, a bank teller, sweet, humble, quiet, the type who volunteered at a local hospice. But what if she wasn't any of those things? What if Angela wasn't the innocent girl who was too trusting of the wrong man? Why would she do this? That was the question that kept Claire awake at night. Angela had the means, the access, and the will, but the deeper Claire dug into Angela's past, the more disturbing the answers became. Angela had grown up in a modest house in Oak Park. A loving mother, a distant father. She'd always been praised for her kindness. She was the type who befriended everyone, listened to their problems, made everyone feel special. But her rise at Fifth Charter had been anything but normal. Angela had started at the bank as a part-time teller. At first, just another face among many. But then, something had shifted. She began to take on more responsibility. Not just managing money. She was involved in securing vault keys, training other staff members, and handling sensitive accounts. Within 3 years, Angela had risen faster than any employee in the bank's history. No one questioned it. She had the charm, the smile that made everyone feel like they mattered. But what if that smile wasn't just a tool of friendliness? What if it was a mask? Claire took a step back and remembered something Angela had said during her first interview. I never wanted to work in a bank. I thought about being a nurse, helping people. But life has its own plans. Those words haunted Claire now. Life has its own plans. Did that mean she didn't care how her life turned out, as long as it got her what she wanted? As the investigation dragged on, new pieces of evidence trickled in, each one more unsettling than the last. Angela's credit card statements revealed something Claire had not anticipated: huge cash withdrawals, not from her bank account, but from someone else's, someone whose name Angela had never mentioned. Claire pulled the records of a second bank account, one that Angela had hidden under an alias, J. Harper. J. Harper was not just a name, it was a ghost. The account had been opened in 2019 using an outdated ID. The deposit slips? They didn't belong to Angela. They belonged to someone named Jordan Lee Marshall. Claire felt a chill creep down her spine. This wasn't just about the heist. This was about partnership, a deeper scheme that had been building long before that fateful morning in July. Angela wasn't just working with Jordan. She was working for him. At 3 a.m. on a Thursday, Claire's phone rang. The caller ID showed an unknown number. It was a tip, a man who claimed to have information about Angela and Jordan. The voice on the other end was shaky, scared. I know them. I used to work at the bank. They never told anyone, but they were in on it from the start. Angela, she knew everything about the bank. And Jordan, he was the one who orchestrated it. He promised her a cut. He promised her a way out. But it wasn't about money. It was about something much bigger. The voice faltered. They were going to burn it all down. This wasn't just about stealing from a bank. They were going to take down the whole system. And Angela, she wanted more. She wanted power. Claire's heart raced. This wasn't just a heist. It was an inside job designed to topple something much more sinister. But what? Angela wasn't just the innocent girl who got caught up in Jordan's web. No, she had played the role perfectly. She had been in control, working behind the scenes. She had an agenda of her own. The phone call continued, detailing the secret meetings between Angela and Jordan. The conversations where Angela was promised power, more than just money. A world where they didn't answer to anyone. The man on the phone had overheard them in the break room one day, talking in low voices. He had tried to ignore them, but one sentence stuck out. Once we do this, we'll have it all. The bank, the keys, the power. But what was this power? What had Angela been promised in exchange for betraying her employer, her community, and her entire life? Claire decided to confront Angela one last time. This time, Angela didn't play the victim. She didn't break down in tears. No more excuses. This time, Angela sat across from Claire, cool as a cucumber, and smiled. I don't care if you find the money. I don't care if you find the accounts. But I'll tell you this. I didn't just do this for Jordan. I did it for me. Angela leaned forward, her eyes sharp. You think Jordan was the mastermind? You're wrong. He was a pawn, a tool. He was just as much a victim as you're trying to make me out to be. But I wanted more. I needed more. Claire could hardly believe her ears. But Angela wasn't done. Jordan and I, we're not just thieves. We're players in something bigger. And if you want to know the truth, you're going to have to follow the trail. But don't say I didn't warn you, Claire. This game, it doesn't end well for anyone. The cold light of the interrogation room had never felt so oppressive. Angela Whitaker sat across from Claire Mendoza, her face a mask of calm indifference. The confession had been chilling. But even after Angela's admission that she and Jordan were part of something larger, Claire was still left with one burning question. What was this power Angela had mentioned? And who else was involved? Angela's words echoed in Claire's mind. If you want to know the truth, you're going to have to follow the trail. But don't say I didn't warn you, Claire. This game, it doesn't end well for anyone. The clock on the wall ticked on, the seconds growing louder in the silence. Claire's mind raced as she pieced together everything they had learned so far. Angela wasn't the innocent bank teller she'd pretended to be. She was a player in something far more dangerous. But what was it? Claire needed to dig deeper, and fast. As the investigation continued, the FBI began pulling more strings, uncovering the true scale of the operation Angela and Jordan were involved in. The trail led them to a series of secret meetings, coded messages, and encrypted documents. They weren't just dealing with a simple robbery, they were unraveling a network. a shadow organization operating in the dark corners of the financial world. One of the first things Claire discovered was that Jordan and Angela weren't the only ones working behind the scenes. There were other players. Powerful, wealthy individuals with influence in high places. People who were untouchable by the law. And it wasn't just about the money. This heist had been a statement, a bold move in a larger game. A game of control. Through a series of undercover operations, Claire's team began tracing financial flows linked to Jordan and Angela's hidden accounts. The money wasn't just laundered, it was funneled into investments that traced back to shell companies operating under different names. One name stood out above the rest: the Blackbridge Group. The Blackbridge Group was an elite, private investment firm with ties to some of the world's most influential political figures. The company's stated purpose was to provide high-end consulting services to financial institutions. But Claire soon learned the truth. It was a front for something far more nefarious. Through the Blackbridge Group, Angela and Jordan had gained access to a network of resources, powerful individuals who used their wealth and influence to manipulate global markets, destabilize economies, and control political outcomes. And now, they had access to something dangerous: the ability to disrupt the very foundation of the global financial system. The deeper Claire delved, the clearer the picture became. Jordan's heist wasn't just a robbery, it was a message to those in power. The Blackbridge Group was about to unleash a series of actions that would destabilize entire economies and banking systems, to shift global influence into their hands. It was a masterstroke of financial terrorism. Not only had Jordan and Angela stolen millions, but they had also put the system itself at risk. The stolen money? It was a small fraction of the chaos they were planning. Claire began to suspect that this wasn't just about power. This was about control, taking the world's financial systems and using them as leverage. It was about manipulating the global economy to create a new order. And Angela? She wasn't just a victim or a pawn. She had known this all along. She had been playing both sides, pretending to be the innocent girl at the bank while aligning herself with the dangerous men behind the curtain. But how deep did it go? The more Claire investigated, the more she realized that this was just the tip of the iceberg. Angela had been living a double life, one foot in the world of banking and the other in the hidden corridors of power. She had been feeding information to the Blackbridge Group, helping them manipulate financial systems to their advantage. It was no longer just a matter of a robbery. It was about orchestrating a financial revolution. Claire sat across from Angela once again. This time, the interrogation wasn't about the robbery. It was about the bigger picture, about the network she was part of. Angela had been silent since Claire's last confrontation. But now, the walls were closing in. The truth was undeniable. Angela had played a part in a scheme far beyond her initial involvement with Jordan. "You think I'm just a bank teller, don't you?" Angela said with a thin smile. But the real power doesn't sit in vaults. It sits in the hands of people who know how to control the systems, the people who make sure nothing ever changes. Her words were cryptic, but Claire's instincts told her that Angela wasn't just bragging. She had been given a role in this larger scheme. The Blackbridge Group had been working through Angela, manipulating her for their own ends. It wasn't just about money. It was about power, influence. And Angela had been promised more than just a cut of the heist. She had been promised a place in the new world order they were creating. As the conversation unfolded, Angela revealed more. She had been promised a future where she would rise beyond the confines of her simple life. In exchange for helping the Blackbridge Group, she was going to be set free from the ordinary. The plan was to make her a leader in the network. Not just another cog in the machine, but the one who controlled the machine. Claire knew it was time for the final confrontation. She had all the evidence she needed. The bank statements, the phone records, the encrypted files. Angela had been playing a dangerous game, but now it was over. Claire sat down in front of Angela one last time. The tension in the room was palpable. Angela knew the jig was up. But even as she faced the inevitable consequences, there was something in her eyes, something that told Claire this wouldn't be the end. "You don't understand, Claire," Angela said, her voice soft but filled with venom. "This isn't just about a robbery. It's about the future. I was going to be part of something bigger, something better." Claire stared at her, unblinking. "You think this is about your future? You've ruined people's lives. You've endangered entire economies. And for what?" Angela smiled, her expression turning cold. "You're still thinking too small." She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. This isn't just about money. It's about taking control. And now, I'll have it. Angela Whitaker had been playing her hand carefully. She had kept her secrets close to her chest, smiling through every interrogation, every question, every lie. But now, with her plans falling apart, there was no more room for games. Claire Mendoza had everything: the evidence, the confessions, the players, but the real battle was just beginning. As the case took a new turn, Claire realized that the conspiracy wasn't just about a couple of individuals, a failed heist, or a stolen fortune. This was about something much bigger, something with roots that ran deep within the highest echelons of power. And now, with every revelation, the world Angela and Jordan had tried to build was collapsing around them. The Blackbridge Group wasn't just some obscure investment firm. It was an empire, a network of power, wealth, and control that had existed in the shadows for decades. But empires fall, and Angela, she was no longer the star of the show. She was just another pawn in a game far beyond her comprehension. Her betrayal, and the corruption within it, was about to unravel the very foundation of the financial system. And Claire was the one who would bring it all crashing down. The FBI had been working tirelessly, pulling together every shred of evidence they could find. Every account, every transaction, every coded message that tied Angela to the Blackbridge Group and the larger network of corruption was slowly surfacing. But now, it wasn't just about finding Angela. It was about finding everyone involved. Claire had learned that the Blackbridge Group had sponsors, powerful individuals who had used the firm to move money, manipulate stock markets, and influence political decisions across the globe. These weren't just average criminals. These were the elite. And it wasn't just about a single heist anymore. It was about taking down a global conspiracy. As the FBI dug deeper into the financial trails, they discovered an encrypted database, a ledger of names, dates, transactions, and hidden deals. It was massive, and buried inside were files on some of the most powerful people in the world. There were government officials, CEOs of multinational companies, high-ranking members of the military, people who had used the Blackbridge Group as their personal tool for control. And now, those names were coming to light. As the investigations continued, the FBI's findings sent shockwaves through the global financial system. The first domino to fall was a former senator from California who was directly connected to the laundering operations of the Blackbridge Group. It didn't take long before his ties to the group were exposed, and within 48 hours, his resignation sent ripples through Washington. But that was just the beginning. Next, the CEO of one of the world's largest tech firms was implicated. His company had been using Blackbridge's encrypted accounts to funnel money into various untraceable projects. The CEO was arrested within a week, his empire crumbling under the weight of the charges. The corporate world held its breath as more names surfaced, each more powerful than the last. Then came the military, a chain of command that had been compromised. High-ranking officers had been secretly working with Blackbridge to manipulate global tensions, influencing arms deals, and even redirecting military resources to fund covert operations. With every arrest, the web of corruption spread wider, and the conspirators, once so powerful, began to realize the consequences of their actions. The giants they had worked so hard to build were falling, and they were falling fast. But the real story, Claire realized, wasn't about the powerful men and women who had used the Blackbridge Group as a weapon. The true betrayal, the one that had started it all, lay in Angela Whitaker's involvement. She wasn't just a simple bank teller who had been manipulated. She had known exactly what she was doing. Angela had wanted to climb the ladder. She had craved the power that came with controlling an empire. She had been willing to sell her soul, her morals, and her loyalty for a place at the top. She wasn't just a pawn, she was a player. In the months leading up to the heist, Angela had used Jordan as a stepping stone. She had seen in him a means to an end, someone who would help her execute the plan she had been building for years. The money was only a small part of it. What Angela truly wanted was the control that came with being a part of something so much bigger. The more Claire learned about Angela's motives, the more disgusted she became. Angela hadn't been coerced. She hadn't been forced. She had chosen this path. She had aligned herself with the worst kind of people, and she had done so for one reason: ambition. Claire had to admit it. Angela wasn't a victim. She was a criminal. As the investigation drew to a close, Claire received an anonymous tip. The source didn't give a name. They simply pointed her toward a set of classified documents. Documents that would provide the final piece of the puzzle. The documents were released from the Blackbridge Group's encrypted files, but they weren't part of the standard records. These were personal communications between Angela and the mastermind behind the entire operation, the true leader of Blackbridge. For months, Angela had been in contact with a man known only as R. He was the one who had orchestrated the entire scheme, pulling the strings from the shadows. His identity was hidden, his face never shown, but his words were damning. In one of the final messages Angela received from him, he wrote, "The time has come. We can take it all. The world will change when we're in control. You'll be more than just a player, Angela. You'll be the queen." The realization hit Claire hard. Angela wasn't just part of the game. She had wanted it. She had been promised a seat at the table. And when she couldn't get what she wanted through normal means, she had taken it by betraying her employer, her community, and her morals. The investigation had ended, but for Claire, the journey was far from over. The arrests of the global elites were only the beginning of a much larger reckoning. Angela Whitaker, once the smiling bank teller, now faced charges that would keep her behind bars for the rest of her life. Jordan Lee Marshall had disappeared, his fate unknown, but Claire wasn't concerned about him anymore. The empire they had tried to build had crumbled, and the giants they had manipulated were now toppled. But in the end, it was clear. Ambition, betrayal, and power had been the true driving forces behind this entire operation. And for Angela, the price of her betrayal was far greater than she had ever imagined. The world would never be the same. The echoes of falling empires were now a deafening roar. Angela Whitaker had been a part of something far darker than anyone could have imagined. She had wanted power, and now she was staring down the barrel of justice. But what about the others? What about the hidden puppet master, R? And what about the world they had tried to shape with blood and betrayal? The Blackbridge Group was finished. The money was gone. The secrets were spilled. But the one question that still lingered was this: who was R? The answer would send shockwaves through the entire global financial system, but not in the way anyone had expected. Weeks had passed since Angela's arrest. The trials of the other conspirators were unfolding in public, their lives crumbling one by one. But Claire still couldn't shake the question of R. The mastermind, the one pulling all the strings, had been a ghost, never seen, never caught, and always one step ahead. But now, Claire had something that could finally expose him. A breakthrough had come from the FBI's deep dive into Blackbridge's secret communications. One email, buried beneath layers of encryption, had finally surfaced. It was the last email sent before the heist. It had been sent to Angela, but not from Jordan. This was the moment of truth. The email, simply signed with R/73, read, "We've done our part. Now we let the world see the fall. The real game starts when the system cracks. Be ready. The world will never know the truth. It's too dangerous." Claire felt a cold chill as she read the message again. The person behind this wasn't just playing for money or influence. They were playing for chaos, for destruction. But who was he? And why did they feel so untouchable? Her hands trembled as she stared at the email's metadata. The IP address, the timestamp. She knew where this would lead. It had to be him. The mastermind was someone inside the government. Someone with enough power to hide in plain sight. Someone who had manipulated the very systems they had worked to break. 2 days later, Claire received a call that would change everything. The FBI had run a trace on the metadata, leading them to a government facility, a building that housed one of the most secretive and secure departments in the country. A facility no one knew about, not the media, not even the public. There, deep in the heart of the government, was a file that contained the identity of R. Claire's heart stopped as she read the name. Senator James Lockwood, the man who had publicly spoken out against financial corruption, the man who had built a career around championing the common man and railing against the very systems Angela and Jordan had exploited, the man who had funded the rise of organizations like Blackbridge to maintain his power and influence. Lockwood had been operating under a carefully constructed mask of righteousness. He was the face of political integrity, the man who was going to fix the system. But the truth? The truth was far worse. Lockwood had been the one orchestrating everything from the shadows. For years, he had manipulated Angela, Jordan, and countless others, using them as pawns in a game to gain global financial power. He had built Blackbridge Group to not just control money, but to control entire governments. But why? What was the point of all of this? Claire knew what she had to do. This wasn't just about bringing down a criminal. This was about stopping a man who was willing to tear down entire systems, to create chaos, in order to establish his own rule. She flew to Washington, D.C. The trial against Angela and the other conspirators was still ongoing, but Claire knew this was bigger than any one case. It was about ensuring that Lockwood never gained the power he had sought for so long. Claire stood outside the Capitol building, the weight of the world pressing down on her. This was her moment. She had worked for years to bring down criminals, but this was the ultimate test of her resolve. As she entered the building, Claire was intercepted by the FBI director. He had news. Senator Lockwood had been arrested, but not by the FBI. It had been an insider, someone within the system, someone who had finally gotten fed up with Lockwood's plans for domination, someone who had seen the destruction he was about to cause and had taken matters into their own hands. In a stunning turn of events, James Lockwood had been removed from power by an underground network of whistleblowers, a network that had been working in the shadows to dismantle the corrupt financial system Lockwood had helped build. But Lockwood wasn't done fighting. When Claire finally met him face to face, he was unrepentant. He still believed he had been in control, that he had done nothing wrong. "You don't understand," Lockwood sneered, his eyes wild with fury. "I was saving the world. The system was broken, and I was the one who could fix it. I was going to take the power from the corrupt elites and give it back to the people." The irony wasn't lost on Claire. The man who claimed to be fighting for the people had used their trust to destroy everything they held dear. And now, he would pay the price. Angela was sentenced to life in prison, her role in the conspiracy now fully exposed. But even in her final moments, she remained defiant. She still believed she had done the right thing, that she was a hero. She was a woman who had been willing to risk everything for the promise of power. And in the end, that desire had led her to ruin. Jordan Lee Marshall was still on the run. Whether he would ever be caught, no one knew. But his role in the conspiracy was now an open book. And as for the Blackbridge Group, it was gone. Its web of influence had been unraveled, and its empire of corruption had been crushed beneath the weight of its own hubris. As Claire left the courtroom, she couldn't help but wonder, had justice been served? Or was this just the beginning of a new game? A game where the true puppeteers were still out there, pulling the strings, waiting for the next opportunity to rise again. The fall of the giants was complete, but at what cost? Angela, Jordan, Lockwood, all players in a game that spun out of control. The conspiracy that shook the foundations of the financial world has come to a close. But was it truly the end? Or was it just another chapter in a never-ending story of power, control, and corruption? What do you think? Was justice served in the end? Or did those in power simply walk away unscathed? Let us know in the comments. Do you believe there are more hidden forces out there, waiting for their chance to strike? Who do you think will be the next giant to fall? Subscribe for more gripping true crime stories, and stay tuned for more cases where the truth is far more dangerous than the crime.